Hello, I'm Ghost. I'm your host. Happy 2025. First real upload of the year because last time it was, just some behind the scenes. I hope you enjoyed that, but like I said, we're back to our standard scheduled content. And hey, I've been thinking. It's kind of weird how horror seems to rely on the same 7 things all the time. And I thought that it would be interesting to dissect one of those big things, which is nostalgia. How horror can use nostalgia against you to really get into your head, and how it's kind of been overdone at this point. So let's talk about it. I'm done with the intro. I'll cut the bullshit. Let's just get to the real content, shall we? So nostalgia. If you don't know somehow, nostalgia is kind of like that weird feeling you get when you're reflecting on, old memories and whatnot. It feels good. Sometimes. It definitely can be a negative thing, but for the most part, I find nostalgia to be comforting. Reflecting on, playing Yokai Watch in my friend's bedroom for hours on end. Stuff like that's always just a really, really fun time for me. Which is why horror likes to take advantage of it. Previously, I made a video about the relationship between religion and horror, and the whole idea was essentially taking something pure and twisting it. Well, pure when it comes to religion is a little bit contradictory, I suppose. I do not let woman teacher take authority over a man. They must be quiet. But, you get the idea. With nostalgia, it's really kind of the same thing. Horror likes to take something that's, generally speaking, innocent and turn it into something bad. Take, for example, the video game Tattletale. A lot of people have nostalgia for the Furbies they used to own as a kid. Other people are absolutely terrified of them, but a lot of people are nostalgic for them. Tattletale's whole thing is basically evil Furbies, which sounds really quite stupid. But then, a lot of people were, at the time of the release at least, kind of creeped out by it. And to be fair, you gotta understand why. Imagine something from your childhood becoming entirely demented. This has become a very common theme in horror, being the foundation of several different entire genres. For example, Mascot horror. Mascot horror thrives on nostalgia. Not everything, Hello Neighbor's probably not capitalizing on how your good old memories of your neighbor living in some weird mansion with a train in his house, but things like Five Nights at Freddy's are a great example. The retro aesthetic, the Chuck E. Cheese inspired pizza place, stuff like that, where it takes from your childhood and makes it evil. Imagine, if you found out that your childhood favorite pizza place ended up having a bunch of child murders take place. It's kind of fucking weird. And that's exactly how nostalgia can be used for horror. Mascot horror is just one of the genres that really, really capitalizes on nostalgia, however. Another example of something that really capitalizes on it is analog horror. Well, albeit it applies less to my generation, people that were alive longer ago are likely more affected by analog horror, with the often camcorder-type aesthetics that are supposed to make you think of how things used to be. Something that clearly draws inspiration from Five Nights at Freddy's, The Walton Files, is a great example of this. It's taking, this camcorder aesthetic, combining it with an animatronic restaurant, and creating this horrible, twisted, demented thing, which often has a lot of connections to reality. For example, some of the major plot points being, a drunk driving accident. Things like that. Walton Files is really effective, because it feels nostalgic. Watching Bunny Farm, for example, will make you think of, the old arcade games you may have used to have played. I used to play arcade games when I was a kid from long before my time, so personally, Bunny Farm was kind of a weird watch for me, because it does capitalize on that feeling. Taking nostalgia isn't hard. In fact, it goes back quite some time. Just look at the very origins of Creepypasta. Some of the most iconic old Creepypastas ever created, such as, say, Sonic.exe or Ben Drowned, take things that, games that you've played as a kid or movies that you used to watch as a kid, and adds this disturbing texture to it. Perhaps it has some weird demonic connections, or perhaps some kid died while playing it and now they possess the game. Whatever it ends up being, it's taking something from your childhood and making it twisted. The twisting of innocence is a very, very common theme in horror. That's why children are so commonly used in horror, such as with The Exorcist. And that's why using nostalgia against the viewer or the consumer is so highly effective. Another example of nostalgia being used against the viewer is any old internet-themed things. I know that sounds really quite peculiar, but let me expand. Videos of old websites no longer there, or poorly designed websites reminiscent of the ones from the early 2000s, things like that. It's really spooky, for a lot of reasons. On one hand, people are actually just straight up creating this stuff. It's not just like all of it's a work of fiction. You never know with a lot of these websites. But the other thing is, a lot of people find the memories of, browsing the old internet kind of comforting. But in the end, there really was a twisted side of it. And that's exactly what a lot of these, particularly YouTube videos discussing old internet things, do. They're taking these old websites and whatnot and telling you a bunch of weird, spooky, disturbing shit. I also believe that this has had a big sway on just YouTube as a whole. Look at the entire horror scene. Look up a Nick Crowley video. Or, hell, my channel is a big offender in this regard, actually. Look at our thumbnails. Old VHS aesthetics. Admittedly, while it definitely isn't as applicable to say if, someone from fucking Gen Alpha is looking around for a video, this is something old, retro, and nostalgic for a lot of people, including my generation. And so, it's interesting. It grabs people's attention. In the end, whether nostalgia is the best or not at spooking people, let's be honest here. A lot of people like reflecting on their past. Or at least, the fond parts of it. Channels like this in the horror scene often use that to pique people's interest. But here's the thing. Nostalgia's relationship with horror is very tight. But it has become overused. It's starting to lose its impact. I can't think of the last time that I watched an analog horror series and felt genuinely disturbed. Or saw some YouTube video with this type of aesthetic and really thought this really, really fucking stands out. Nostalgia has been overused to the point that the impact it once had is not there anymore. And when it is, it's a lot less than how it used to be. We've twisted it so much, and it's run so rampant. I mean, you heard all of the examples I've given. That it's just starting to grow stale. Now, is there a way that we can maybe make it otherwise? I think that we just need to back off of it for a little while. Eventually the impact will come back, but we just need to lay off of it. We've used it so much in horror that there's just nothing unique about it anymore, or really gripping. We can bring it back, though, if we just go elsewhere. Horror has started to grow stale for me. A lot of it, at least, the recent stuff, because it's a lot of rehashing ideas that's already been done. I believe that there's an endless amount of things that we can do with this genre. That's part of why I love horror so much, because there really aren't many barriers to it. I think we really need to go in some other directions and really explore unique, creative, and risky things to bring back the impact of horror. Nostalgia and horror are tightly related, and it's an interesting topic for me to talk about, so I hope you've enjoyed hearing about it. There's a lot of things that horror likes to dwell on. Nostalgia is one of the biggest ones. Thank you, and I hope to see you in the next video.
Midnight were the stars and you. Midnight and a rendezvous. Your eyes held a message tender, saying I surrender all my love to you. Midnight brought us sweet romance. I know all my whole life through calling me, whatever else I do. Midnight